Welcome back to our second session of the day, Effective Tools for Handling Stressful Conversations. To introduce our speaker, we have our IACET Director of Accreditation, Ty Kelly.
Hello, everyone. How are you? So today I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Dr. Lola Gershfeld. Dr. Gershfeld is founder and CEO of EMC Leaders, where thriving cultures are shaped. She focuses on educating leaders on how to engage team members and resolve conflict through the emotional connection so that teams can be more productive. The EMC process is groundbreaking and empirically supported approach based on the science of attachment and emotional connection. Using the EMC process, Dr. Gershfeld has helped hundreds of people in for-profit and nonprofit organizations develop positive team cultures that support sustainable growth. Dr. Gershfeld received her doctorate in organizational psychology from the University of the Rockies in Colorado, and she's an expert in the field of emotional connection. She leads the EMC research group comprised of researchers and business professionals focusing on continued evaluation of the effectiveness and application of the EMC process. In addition to the EMC workshops and training sessions, Dr. Gershfeld has developed online courses, including the EMC course, EMC Masterclass, and the EMC Train the Trainer. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Gershfeld. Welcome.
Thank you, Ty. So nice to see you, and thank you so much for allowing me to be here, for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, welcome everyone. It is so nice to see everybody's here. That's a nice group of people. I hope you starting to enjoy your conference. It is amazing that we can do this on Zoom. You are in my home office. Welcome on the West Coast in the beautiful Fullerton, California. You know, it's pretty early, but I love this topic. So I don't mind getting up so early and being here with you. Just outside of my windows here in the living room, there's a beautiful and majestic San Gabriel's Mountains. There are lots of trees on the hills closer, right in front of those, changing colors, and you know, as the fall season coming through, and a lush golf course. So I'm really blessed to be in this beautiful place here. Yes, today, as Ty pointed out, today I'm going to talk to you about something different in addressing stressful conversations or situations. We are not only in a different place at this moment with coronavirus and pandemic, working at home, trying to figure out a new way of living, but for the last 10 years, I've been really busy doing research on workplace conflicts because it has been my passion to find a way for people to work cohesively together. And when I came to the conclusion that really the attachment science has really cracked the code for us, which means that we now have a systematic map not only to resolving conflicts in a way where we can take people through the stressful conversation situations to the other side where they can collaborate and work cohesively together, but we can actually help people to build a more secure bond with each other, where they can thrive. And this is what we want, right? We want our people not just to survive, but we want them to thrive. And so this is really super exciting for me. And for the last 10 years, we've learned so much working with individuals and teams, helping them. And we see that transformation. I'm really excited to share that with you because stressful conversations are difficult. They're difficult when we have it with our families. They're difficult when we have it at work. And when we don't know how to resolve them, we just get stuck. We get stuck, it starts to weigh on us, and work becomes less and less fun and less productive. So in our time together, I thought I'll introduce you to this process of emotional connection, or EMC as we call it for short. And it will help you to deal and handle stressful situations and conversations in a different way a little bit. So I'm going to ask you to put like a different lens. And this does not only applies to workplace situations or interactions, conflicts, it really applies to all of your relationships, whether it is with coworkers, with clients, with family members, with your children or your spouse. I have grandkids and I teach them. I have 5 grandkids. It ranges from 5 to 13, and I teach them this language of emotional connection. So they can come and say, oh, Grandma, I got disconnected at my school. And this is what the language is. Or I feel sad instead of I feel frustrated. I feel sad. So it is really a universal language of emotional connection, because we have this innate need to connect with people. And this language provides an opportunity for people to do so. And it really covers a range of ages. Doesn't matter how old you are, whether you're in your young age or you already in your senior age, it doesn't matter. And it doesn't really matter what culture you come from, because it is language of emotions. It is scientifically proven method, and uses attachment-based principles because it is a humanistic approach. So it doesn't matter who is in the room, whether you have one person, 2 people, or a team. In EMC, you really focus on creating emotional safety for people, to share the vulnerability, to share their emotions, to share their fears, their needs, so they can feel heard, seen, and valued. And this is what the emotional connection is all about. This is what helps us to thrive. So the first thing I want to share with you is that people who work together are extremely, extremely important to each other because they depend on each other. This dependency creates a need for us to bond. It automatically happens for us. And a need for attachment. And so using this framework of attachment, we do that because of that dependency. We can't really do our work without people around us. And emotional connection is really the glue that holds that bond together. So in the EMC process, we're not only changing how people interact with each other, we are really shifting their relationships to have a more secure bond. And that bond helps us to feel safe, to know that people have our backs, if we have each other's back, to trust each other, and to thrive. So when you do that, you really change the dynamics within your team and within your company. You change the dances, as we call it. What we see is we don't really change the relationship only. We help people to grow, and they help each other to grow. We are talking about this is the focus that we do in EMC. And the focus is to make you fit for life, fit what Carl Rogers, who never met John Bowlby, is the father of attachment theory. If anyone is familiar with attachment, is they never been soulmates. It's a shame they never met. But fit what Carl Rogers calls existential living, which is a whole lot more than just learning some coping skills. It's really about being able to grow and to create and innovate, to be open to experiences, to risk, to engage, to really, really be engaged with yourself and with others, to be resilient, to be able to adapt and make good choices in life, and build strong relationships, because relationships are essential. And this is what we all want. We want this. We want people to grow, and we want to grow ourselves. What attachment science says is that relationships are the key for us to have that experience. Attachment science is simply by far the best, most complete, most research, taking people into this place of human development. It is really the most richest theory of human development social psychologists have ever created. It tells us who we are. Who we are the bonding social mammals. We have that felt sense of connection, and that is our primary need, especially when we are threatened. Of course, the reason why we love it so much in the EMC process, because it is a relational theory. Our relationship with people that we depend on really define of who we are. This applies to relationships at work and at home. This is where we find our emotional balance. Or when we are not connected, we lose our emotional balance. Kind of like an analogy to give you, think of fish in the water. The water is in the environment where fish can live. If you take fish out of water, it looks very bizarre. Well, similarly to our relationships, when we have a stressful interaction with people or we have conflict going on, we can't really just take one person and say, well, this is the problem. We have a problem with just the one person who's causing all this problem. Well, it would be just like taking fish out of water. It's really the conflict and stress is created in relationship with others. So when you fix people's relationships, you fix the interactions, you change the dynamics in the room. It's kind of funny for me sometimes where I see people issuing personal improvement plans or sending one person to a coach. It's not one person. It is how they interact. It is what's happening inside and what's happening between the people. That's what we are looking for. And I think that is perhaps one of the reasons why our field of training and development and leadership has gone so crazy sometimes in the last 2 decades, coming up with more and more ways of fixing individuals instead of addressing relationships, instead of addressing the emotional disconnect that is causing the problem in the relationship. So what attachment science does, it really gives us a map to a more secure way of interacting, of being, of addressing our fears and our needs, really dealing with it with our vulnerabilities. And we all have vulnerabilities, no matter how old we are. I'm thrilled also that we're doing our first study of the EMC process. So for the last several months, I've been really busy in creating the course so we can see how the training of the EMC process really helps people with their emotional intelligence, with their interactions, with their social skills, with their relational. And our first pilots, the results are coming in, which are very exciting. And I'm so excited about that I could just fly. And I could take off. I don't know what I was really expecting, but I never expected that I would be so excited to see some statistical data. And I think we're going to find this roadmap as effective as I have seen. I mean, I've done close to 500 conflict cases. And because we know, and it's really has been very transformational for me, because we know how people go into their emotions. And this is this is the new lens. I think what I'm asking you to do is to think back. When we deal with stressful conversations, people are mostly focused on identifying behaviors, identifying who is right, who is wrong, identifying whether people think correctly and whether they should be thinking differently. It's rarely that you find any approach that is focusing solely on emotions. And I think emotional connection, that's the word, emotions, is that the difference between the EMC process is the focus we take is emotions. And we know how to effectively and efficiently move people into that emotions and stay with it. Because content is what keeps you in conflict. Conflict resolution is through emotional connection, is through emotions. You also gain your emotional balance, where you can communicate and engage on a whole new different level. Let's take a little pause here and check in with everyone. How's everyone feeling today, since we're talking about emotions here? So Alexa, if you can launch our first poll, that would be great.
Absolutely.
As you think about your work in relationships, about your work concerns or the state of the world, how are you feeling today?
I'm seeing the percentages rising. This is fantastic. We'll give you about 5 more seconds to get those last minute results. We'll go ahead and close the poll. All right, and here are our results.
All right, great. So what we see here, anxious, we have optimistic, 20% optimistic, which is great, I love it. And we do have some confident people, excellent, anxious, 14%, concerned, frustrated, right? We have some happy people and sometimes worried, and hopeful, 23% actually is hopeful. So these are some of these are difficult emotions. And if you've experienced several feelings as somebody's chatting, that is true. We do have a mix of emotions, and it is very normal for us to feel all of these emotions. So thank you so much, appreciate it. It does takes a lot of courage to think about emotions, to recognize what is it that we're feeling, to be even in tune with our emotions. So it definitely takes a lot of courage and strength. So thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to share with you an example, and I'll take you a little bit through the process. So I was called in into a company where the boss told me that there are 2 of his primary managers were not talking to each other. And they're really dysfunctional as a team. He said it's been really difficult for everyone here, and he really feels very bad because most of the people who work with them don't understand how to work together. And he really felt helpless in a way because no matter what he was doing was not really working. And he was very worried because it impacted the culture, the team culture, and he was seeing that it was impacting the company culture as well. So I asked him if it was a recent event, and he said they really haven't been working well together for the last 14 years. I mean, my eyes went big when I heard the 14. I mean, imagine yourself feeling that way, not being able to work with your colleague, with your team member, with your people that you depend on for such a long period of time. You know, your feelings started to being probably not appreciated, maybe not valued at work, worrying about asking questions, worrying about coming to that person, maybe hiding, trying to avoid them. It's so hard to work like that. Well, obviously they have been getting something done, but they have both felt very, very drained and exhausted with the relationship. As you can imagine, it's not easy to be in that situation for such a long time. And it's causing all kinds of miscommunications and misunderstanding in their relationship. And this is what really keeps them stuck. First thing I did is to talk about emotions. And that's the attachment science tells us that the most powerful thing in the room is emotion. So John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, did not really have time for us to show how to work with emotion. He was a little busy telling us who we are. But if you read his stories or his case studies, it sounds awfully compassionate and empathic. So I think Carl Rogers, who is a humanistic psychologist, he would resonate with him. But basically, John Bowlby talked about that the most powerful thing in the room is emotion. Emotion defines our interactions with others. It defines how we dance with others, how you connect with each other. So when you feel alone in your relationship, we start to feel all kinds of emotions. But mostly people don't know how to talk about emotions because they know the word frustrated. Say, how do you feel? They will say, I feel frustrated. Well, what else do you feel? I feel frustrated. I feel maybe annoyed. But I don't think anybody has actually been taught how to say, I feel worried, and I feel isolated, and I feel let down and unimportant, or I feel sad in my relationship. I feel sad for the loss of connection. I feel sad that I'm not able to talk to this person. I feel alone in this relationship. And so perhaps the most basic message of attachment is that our nervous system and who we are as people are not wired to be alone in this world. We're not wired like that. We don't function well without the emotional connection, especially with people we depend on. We can live without physical contact as we are doing right now, but we can't live without emotional connection. Even through Zoom, we can create emotional connection, but we need to know how to do that because that needs to be with emotions, addressing emotions. So just like fish can't live without water, we can't function well without emotional connection. And when we try, we have all kinds of crazy behaviors starting happening to us. So we are really obsessed. We're obsessed in loneliness. We're obsessed with emotional isolation because it really destroys our ability to keep our emotional balance. It even destroys our ability to keep our mind coherent. It destroys our ability to define ourselves in any kind of competent way. So emotion is very powerful. So in the process, we follow it. We learn how, we teach how to tune into it. We stay in that emotional channel with people, and we join people where they are. So going back to my example, I met with these two managers, and I always do individual meetings first, where people can feel safe to share what they have experienced, and to start learning the process. As I take them through the process, they start to learn about things like what triggered the disconnect, what some of the emotions they experienced, what some of the fears. So as I listen to their story, I reflect back to them, but as fast as possible, I tune into their emotion. I go into that emotional channel with them, and just like a secure parent does, I stay with them in that emotional experience. I don't say to them, let me teach you some mindfulness and you can deal with your emotions on your own. I don't say that. I say, let me help you to express your emotions. And so we have a list of emotions I created so people know. And so they can experience a new way of interacting with each other. So emotion is the key. And I begin to untangle the depth of all the emotions that were present in their interaction. So I meet with the managers individually. So my primary and foremost goal is to create emotional safety and alliance. The fundamental aspect of stressful conversations, as evident in this case, is that these two managers have been stuck in what we call a negative cycle of interaction, a negative cycle of thoughts and actions, behaviors that keeps their dance disconnected. Not only difficult to endure, it is not very pretty to watch. So as I started to work with them, I had 3 individual sessions so they can get through the pattern, they're understanding their pattern, that they can get through the comfort of looking at their interaction through a different lens. Then I had them both together in the room or on Zoom, 3 paired sessions, as we call them. And then I brought the whole team together, and we had 3 team sessions where everyone had the opportunity to just have the expression. Because these 2 people were mostly in a negative cycle, they had to repair the connection first. And then once they have done it, everyone else felt very safe, and they could see the difference as they were going through the sessions. And we do this, for example, so the individual sessions I had every couple of weeks, then paired sessions every couple of weeks, and then the team sessions every 3 weeks. So it's over a period of time, people started to learn, people start to experience, and at the end, people felt so much more relieved. They felt like they have a more positive and optimistic view of the relationship. They were hopeful in moving forward. They were a lot more connected than before. They still have more work to do, because what they have gone is through that experience, and now to nurture and to secure that bond, they need to continue working on it and learning about the EMC process in terms of techniques, understanding, slowing things down. So what I want you to notice is that even though they had 14 years of history together of this negative cycle, think of how fast it was possible for me to go past all the negative stories, all the experiences, and quickly get them to a place where they felt a lot more closer together. I mean, that's amazing to me. How did I do that? Well, the answer is easy. The answer is I have a map. I don't get stuck in content. This is what I teach my trainers, is don't get focused on too much of content, because you're going to get sucked into that negative cycle with them. So how did I put my finger on the key messages that have defined their relationship and get to the core emotion? I have a map. I have a map of attachment. And this is why I'm obsessed with attachment science. Not because it's brilliant and elegant and tells us who we are. That's nice, not because of all the thousands of research, but because it never lets me down. When I work with individuals who are in stressful conversations, stressful situations, it never lets me down. Whether it's 1 person, 2 people, 3 people, it doesn't matter, the whole team. My focus is connection. It always helps me to understand where people are going, where they are, and how to get them to the end result of connection. In the end result of having peaceful relationships, but I do that through connection. It really helps me to understand how their relationship defines their interactions, and the way they deal with their emotions really defines their dance. And it always does that. So what I'm going to show you is the process of the negative cycle. I want you to think as an infinity loop. This is exactly what happens in the stressful conversation, in conflict, because they repeat themselves over and over and over again. So what I want you to notice that the EMC process helps me to see the way these 2 managers get stuck in this infinity loop that perpetuates the disconnect. So one says, I run and I hide. This is what I do when I get stressed. I shut everybody out. And this is how I protect myself. And the other person says, I demand and I complain and I criticize. And this is the way I protect myself. So what they have described are the steps of a protective behaviors or ineffective strategies, as we call it. One person withdraws, shuts down, and the other one attacks and demands. So one person withdraws, preserving the connection, and one person pursues the connection. So if you think about that, people who work together, they always want connection because they depend on each other. There's always longing for that connection. So, but when people lose that connection, they have a different way of going after the connection. So some people pursue connection and some people preserve the connection, because withdrawers who withdraw, it's not that they don't care. This is what we think, right? When they walk away, they don't want to talk to us, we think automatically they don't care. But that is not true. They do care. They get overwhelmed. They don't know how to express themselves. So they say, I better not say anything, because if I say something, I'm going to get more disconnected. So the more, but the problem is, the more they shut down, the more the other pursues. So I'm going to quickly go through this, and so you can see how this works. So one manager felt excluded. Her raw spots were not valued. Then her feelings were feeling frustrated, and her automatic thoughts were, you don't care about me. And she goes criticizing, blaming, demanding, not only to the manager itself, but going to the CEO or going to the colleague. And this is what one manager does. When she gets excluded from a decision-making, from some project, she felt her raw spot get hit, which is the trigger is not being valued. She feels frustrated, which is surface emotions. She right away automatically thinks, you don't care about me. And then she goes to criticize, demand, judge, maybe lecture. This is this person's way of dealing with her emotions, her distress of disconnection. The other manager feels attacked. So this is what triggers them. They feel attacked. The trigger is being judged as not good enough. They feel upset. Again, surface emotion. Automatically, I have to get away from here. I feel overwhelmed. And then I shut down and avoid. The more I shut down and avoid, the more the other person feels excluded. Again, the raw spot hits not being valued, frustrated, they don't care about me. And then they go to criticize, demand. The more this person criticizes, demand, the other feels attacked, being not judged and not good enough, upset. I have to get away. I shut down and avoid. As I take them through the process, I help them to identify all of these components in their experience. And my whole idea is to help them to start to recognize that it's not the people are the bad guys. It's the negative cycle that keeps them in this conflict. And as soon as they start to recognize and they're able to articulate what is happening for them, and again, in the session, they have a list of emotions, they have a list of raw spots to choose from. So I already give them that language. They start to go down into the vulnerability, and they start to learn the language to not go to, okay, I got triggered, raw spot, emotion, but instead of just using the surface emotion, they start to learn how to use softer emotions. They start to learn how to express themselves in their primary emotions. They start to be able to recognize what's happening with their body. What does it look like as an image? What are my fears are? And instead of going into automatic thought, this person doesn't care about me, they start to learn to say, you know what? When I feel excluded, I get scared. I get scared like I'm not important anymore. Now, when the other person hears that from a place of vulnerability, wow, she feels scared that she's not important. Of course she's important. It's not that I shut down, not because or I exclude, or I don't ask her, not because she's not important. I don't go to her because I get overwhelmed myself. I feel like maybe I'm doing something wrong. I feel criticized. My emotions get triggered, and I start to feel scared that I'm inadequate. So I don't go and ask her for opinion or to include her. Do you see how that works? So we start to change people's dances. I mean, if you think of interaction as a dance, emotion is the music of the dance. As people start to learn how to express their emotions, what is it, and tune into their emotions, and have the language for their fears, identifying and share it in this vulnerable, safe way, people start to change their dance. They start to change their music. This is what we're doing in the EMC process. We change their music so people can dance to the same music. So the positive cycle, again, I'm going to go pretty quickly because of time, but in a positive cycle, again, we have the trigger, we have the ROS, but now we have emotions more than just for surface emotion, but we go into softer with primary emotions. We help them to share their fears in a very, very safe way, because it's all about my worst fear about myself is that I'm not valued, that the other person doesn't care about me. And then we teach in the process how to respond to the need of that attachment needs. And attachment needs is reassurance that you are important. You do matter. I do care about you. We're no longer talking about content. We're talking and addressing attachment fears that people have when they get disconnected. And so the other person, the same thing for the other person, they go. And so they can go around and around, and through these sessions, they have this, what we call new corrective emotional experiences, where they can go back and they can really understand what has happened to them and how this negative cycle has taken over the relationship and how to change. So they can say, I feel excluded, I felt not valued. When I feel that way, when I'm not included in this project or in this decision making, I feel rejected and unimportant. And I feel like you don't care about me. And the other person says, I do care about you. Of course I do care about you. It's when I get attacked, when I hear the words of judgment, I start to feel like I'm not good enough. I feel overwhelmed. I feel like you don't care about me, or I'm not valued. And the other person, oh, you know what? You are very valued. I can see how valued you are, and I do care about you. Okay? So kind of like I give you a very quickly, like in 30 seconds, the cycle. But what happens to us is that how we deal with emotions, how we have this words and language to slow things down, to take content almost to the side, speak that language of vulnerability, brings us closer together. We start to recognize that people are struggling, not that they are jerks or they're insensitive. They're struggling and want connection. We start to understand attachment needs and fears, and we really start to get closer together. So the first thing we do is we blame the negative cycle. This is how people feel safe with each other. We blame the negative cycle, not each other. Nobody wants to be the bad guy. We create safety and we start to shift people. We go into their core emotions, which is sadness, loss of connection. Studies have shown that when people spend their energy avoiding their feelings, their emotions, they become more and more sensitive to those emotions. They start to more avoid, and emotions start to hijack them. So we want to help people to feel more empowered. And that's this is what happens to them when they can articulate emotion. And Lisa Feldman Bennett, who does studies on emotion, she said that the more specific you can get on emotions, the less overwhelmed you start to feel. And the more clear you can be in your interactions and in your language. It's nice that transformation happens when you start to really slow things down, really learn about that language, and recognizing the behaviors that keeps people stuck in these terrible negative cycles. So in the EMC process, we really actively create emotional safety. All the time, all the time, all the time. And we try to create an alliance. Alliance is the key. Alliance is a very special kind of alliance. This is what we do, is based on attachment. We use techniques like validation, normalizing. We use techniques like emotional responsiveness, reflection, and we do reframing. We say to them, you guys are stuck in this terrible negative cycle. As you learn the EMC process, you start to learn how to be what we call ARE, emotionally accessible, responsive, and engaged. The $1,000,000 question in attachment is, are you there for me? Are you accessible to me? Are you accessible in terms of your emotions? Are you engaged with me? Are you responsive with me in terms of emotional responsiveness? Can you stay in a conversation even though you don't agree with me? Can you still stay with me emotionally? So I'm not going to walk into a foreign territory if you're not with me, right? You're going to be kidding. So we go into that special alliance where we are ARE and attuned and present with people. You focus on the person and how they put emotions and help them in that emotional language. And we focus on the dance and the dancers. So you change the dance with others, you change the dancers, you teach them the new dance. 3 phrases that I would like to share with you and that you can use right away is, I hear you. I hear you. And I repeat this over and over again. I hear you, because when we are stressed, we can't go through the message sometimes. So we repeat, I hear you. I hear you. I can see how much you care. I think one of the things that people really want to know is that others do see how much they care. And the reason why they may be getting attacking, or maybe they are going to criticize, or maybe they're going, is because they care. Okay? And your feelings are important. Your feelings are important. Alexa, let's do our second poll. All right, can you think back of a stressful conversation that you had maybe with one of your coworkers, or maybe you have been asked to resolve? What was it like for you in terms of the emotions? Go ahead and select your answer.
And here are the results.
All right, so as you can see, frustrating is number 1. That is absolutely true. And I'm not actually surprised about that, because we do feel frustrated. Exhausting is number 2. That is exactly what happens to us when we get stuck in content. It's exhausting because the negative cycle repeats itself. Okay, you can listen to the person, you can, or you get stuck yourself into the same negative cycle. Going in circle, absolutely. So absolutely, these are all common and natural way of people feeling. And look, we have, it's not only just one person, right? We see that this is the pattern, how people feel. Back to our example, as I went through helping these individuals who have expressed the same feelings, the 2 managers shared their emotions. As I took them through the process, we learned that they felt there were a lot of hurt feelings. And hurt feelings, it's interesting about hurt feelings. Our society teaches that if you have hurt feelings, that's okay. Just, put them aside and deal it with themselves. But if you think of carrying a backpack, and every time you have hurt feelings, you put them in the backpack, what happens after some time? Your backpack gets heavy with all these hurt feelings. And really, it weighs you down and builds a wall of protection. So in hurt feelings, fear, and this is by science, fear is the biggest feeling that we experience in hurt feelings. There's fear of not being seen, there's fear of not being heard and not being valued. And it's interesting with these 2 managers, both of these 2 managers have all those hurt feelings. And I'm not surprised, because this is exactly what happens when we get stuck in a negative cycle. And as each manager described their hurt feelings, they started to unpack their backpacks and feel free, providing a pathway to reconnection. So you have to unpack the backpack, which brings us to our last poll question. Go ahead, Alexa, and launch our last poll question. So what is in your backpack?
And here are the results.
Okay, so absolutely, unresolved feelings is number 1. So true. And not understood. The next one, not being valued, feeling of not being seen, not heard, all unimportant, absolutely. All of this are so common. This is very, very true. So thank you very much for sharing, and I really appreciate that. Once each manager recognized what they have been carrying around through the process, they started to be able to turn to each other and share their fears and vulnerability. And statement things like, I care about you, you matter to me, you're important to this team. I know how difficult this has been for you, and I'm here for you now. Those statements of affirmation to each other have started to turn their stressful interactions into productive conversation, where they started to regain their bond, heal their relationship, and create a stronger team effort. Take a moment. Do you think about your backpack? How would it feel for you if the person who you have a disconnect with or stressful conversation say to you, I care about you. You matter to me. Your feelings are valid. You're important to me. You're important to this team. I know how difficult this has been for you. And maybe I wasn't there for you then, but I'm here for you now. I mean, just think about that. That probably soothes your soul, right? This probably helps you to move forward. This helps you to know that you are important. And it's not that people, they send wrong signals. When we are in disconnect, we send wrong signals. We get stuck. The negative cycle is the problem. So it took about 9 meetings to overcome the 14 years of disconnection and misunderstanding. Because I have a map again. I have a map of attachment. And I'm happy to say that these two people are engaged with each other, working. And of course, again, they need to continue learning the process and implement the new techniques. So in EMC, fundamentally focus is on connection. Through our need for attachment, accepting our needs, using this experiential process, you become both impactful and memorable, so you can prepare yourself to future disconnects, spending the least amount of time in the negative cycle. So you learn the 3 phrases, practice. I send a worksheet on, I also am giving you a worksheet where you can do the exercise, working with emotions, and take the time to master the process. It takes time to learn this process. It's not easy, but it's very, very effective. Once you learn it, it's very, very effective and efficient. We have 3 online courses that you can take. The EMC course is just a 90-minute course. It's an introduction. It's actually 2 modules from the EMC Masterclass, the first 2 modules from the EMC Masterclass. But if you want to do the EMC course, it kind of gives you an introduction and gives you more a theory of attachment. And then the EMC Masterclass, it has a workbook, it has 8 modules, it has lots of exercises, and you get transcript of all the videos. And also it has actual sessions, EMC sessions that I have done with people, so you can see how it's done. And the EMC the trainer course, it's a further study where you become the trainer. Okay, so attachment really gives you a map to human vulnerability. It gives you a map to human connection and human motivation. And what it does to me, it gets me on target in the most effective way possible. 5 minutes, I think, for questions. And I know I went really fast. And if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. Thank you.
Participants, feel free to send in your questions to the question and answer panel. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead and get started with them. So first up, one question: do both parties have to participate in the process? Is there value in just one side trying to implement this process?
Absolutely. What a great question. I love these questions. When you yourself learn the process, absolutely, you start to make a difference in your team, in your interaction. It's a little more difficult if one person is doing all the work, right? But you have to constantly get yourself into balance, or maybe you have a colleague where you can do the exercises together, because that will be very helpful so you don't feel alone. But absolutely, one person can do that. That's a great question.
Another question, conflict is often deeply rooted, but even if it isn't, it is still very uncomfortable to begin the conflict resolution process. So how would you recommend that two people in conflict begin to approach some sort of resolution in their day-to-day office environment?
Yeah, that's a great, excellent, brilliant question. Thank you. What I want to say is that, yes, it is very uncomfortable. And that is why we give time for individual sessions where people start to learn the language, try to understand their own vulnerabilities, try to have the freedom to express their hurt feelings in a safe way. And then we help them to restructure and reframe their hurt feelings. So when they get together in a paired session, they feel comfortable in sharing. And people do take risks because we want to be connected. We will absolutely take risk and turn to the other person and say, you know, I feel overwhelmed when that happens. And we see this over and over again. It does take practice. And that is what individual sessions are all about, is to help you to learn that language. When people start to recognize it's a negative cycle, and start to see their cycle and to see the steps in the negative dance that they got stuck in, it is much easier for people to come together and say, look, it's not your fault and it's not my fault, it's the negative cycle is the bad guy. Okay, so thank you for the question.
Thank you so much. We've got another one. What if you're willing to resolve the conflict, but the other person is not? How would you then proceed?
Yes, excellent, again, question. So again, you start with yourself. You are the change maker. The other person is not willing, not because they're not willing, because they don't have the tools, because they're stuck. They're stuck in the deep woods of that music, thinking to themselves, oh, I'm not good enough. This person doesn't value me. This person doesn't care about me. That's the music that they have in their mind playing over and over again. So what you do is you learn the process, you learn to slow things down, you learn to see them, how they're struggling, and you become that safe space for them where they start to maybe see the difference, and you start to use the language and on yourself, instead of saying, oh, I feel frustrated, or avoiding the conversation, you start to expressing, you know, you are important to me. What you say matters to me, and I care about that. So as you learn the language and as you start to use the affirmation language, they start to see the change, and you start to slowly change the music. And I also want to address one comment that the person says, it's very reminiscent of Goleman emotional intelligence. Absolutely. We all know that emotional intelligence is needed. It is rarely that we know how to get there. So in EMC process teaches you how to be emotionally intelligent.
That's great. Thank you so much. And as we close out now, at the end of our session, I know that Jessica will reiterate this, but we just want to thank you so much for your time and your expertise and being able to so eloquently explain such a difficult thing. So
Thank you so much, Dr. Gershfeld. I found your session incredibly helpful, and I'm sure that our attendees definitely took away some great points.
Thank you,
Bye-bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you.